When people think of the proper role of city government, they usually think of police, roads, and schools, right? Or at least we used to. Well, the once lovely city of Los Angeles that once ranked at the top of the country's list now ranks near the bottom in all three, thanks 100% to Democrat leadership. Not to mention that they now have the worst homeless problem in the country. Perhaps this is because the city seems more intent on engaging in socialist utopia experiments than fixing roads, fighting crime, and improving schools. In other words, in more honest words, they are hell-bent on making everyone's lives as miserable as possible, well, except for their elitist buddies. The latest example of their free shit Democrat push is the new Big Leap Basic Income program designed to, quote, transform the role of local government. We'll go over the details right after this quick commercial break to pay some bills. Friends, I'm going to point out the obvious. It seems like big government and big tech are trying to destroy America. Everything they touch turns into a disaster. Pretty soon the whole system will fall apart, and the first thing to fall will be the food supply chain. So, do you have enough emergency food to get through a serious long-term crisis where you can't get food at the grocery store? Most people don't, and they'll panic when the time comes. That is why the smart move now is to get long-term storage emergency food before things go bad. I highly recommend My Patriot Supply. They've served millions of American families and have over 41,000 4-star and 5-star reviews. Their mission is your survival, and right now you can save 25% on a 4-week kit of emergency food that will save the day, probably soon. Order a starter kit for each member of your family, and they'll ship everything quickly and discreetly to your door. Go to preparewithresurgence.com so you can claim your 4-week emergency food kit and save 25% in the process. That's preparewithresurgence.com, or hit that link in the description box. Okay, so while defunding the police and giving free money to people are considered fringe ideas in most reasonable places, in Los Angeles, it is seen as a great idea and a new reality. Something tells me these people should really stick to cell phone fast food apps and other computer stuff. Anyways, last week the idiots running the state into the ground began accepting applications for what amounts to a lottery for 3,000 lucky winners. Now, when I say lucky winners, I really mean free shit parasites created by the likes of Maxine Waters and Gavin Newsom, and of course Nancy and Kamala can't be left out. After all, they helped this kind of idiocy along into a somewhat rational idea in communist California. So the grand prize is $12,000 per year at a total taxpayer cost of $36 million. This is far more than the $2,000 per year dreamed up by Andrew Yang, who introduced the concept to Americans in his presidential race. And again, he recently proposed it to New Yorkers in his mayoral race. New Yorkers rejected it, giving him just 12% of the vote. Now, here's the kicker. About a third of the money comes from defunding the Los Angeles Police Department, another radical idea rejected in other areas. It was just roundly rejected by voters in Minneapolis, despite it being the center of Black Lives Matter's Defund the Police movement. Now, all of the money really, of course, comes from Los Angeles taxpayers, while it really, and I mean really, resembles some sort of lottery. Most are not eligible to win. The city effectively takes about $20 per taxpayer and redistributes it through what is assumed to be a random draw to others. Now, who out there wants to wager that every damn one of these random individuals fits a certain politically convenient demographic and/or category? To be eligible to win this lottery, there is nothing you must do but meet the qualifications established by the city and fill out a lengthy questionnaire, of course. You must have at least one child, thus making it yet another government program that has the effect of encouraging the poor to have more children. You also must have income below the federal poverty line, which is pretty much, 80% of the California population at this point? So, for instance, a single mother with 2 children making over $22,000 per year would not qualify. Thus, the program acts as yet another that discourages work, since merely by working less, a person can qualify to make a free $12,000. Also included in the fine print, if you will, because Democrats love their fine print, don't they? To qualify, you must check a box indicating that you were adversely impacted by the bat stew flu. This allows the program to fit squarely within the never let a tragedy go to waste strategy for progressives. Okay, so just like government subsidies, handouts, loan forgiveness, eviction protections, and rental forgivenesses, this program disguises itself as a bat stew relief program when in fact it is intended to be the first step towards yet another more radical government assistance program. Oh, these clever communists. The final requirement to qualify is filling out an extensive survey, replete with highly personal questions about physical and mental health, finances, and lifestyle. It asked numerous unusual questions like, quote, "In the last month, how often have you been angered by things that were outside your control?" It appears Los Angeles seeks to turn its residents even further into lab rats. More on the further into lab rats part of this later. Indeed, the program is being done in concert with the Center of Guaranteed Income Research at the University of Pennsylvania to use as a model to reform current policies, guide future programs, and aid in the expansion of our social safety net, of course. Naturally, it also asked for ethnicity, gender, i.e. male, female, non-binary, agender, or gender fluid, or liquid, or whatever the hell, and sexual orientation. The program is clear in its objectives. Here's an excerpt from some of their propaganda. Quote, "While no single program can reverse decades of economic and racial inequality that marginalize low-income people of color, Big Leap can point the way towards a more equitable and prosperous future," unquote. Now again, considering the application questions and the purported justification for the program, one must wonder how random the selection will actually be. Since it's a city program, it sits on top of the myriad of other state and federal benefit programs already in place, such as CalWorks, an aid program for adults with children, CalFresh, which is food stamps, WIC, everybody knows what WIC is, Medi-Cal, and the Federal Earned Income Tax Credit, and Medicare. The program proudly boasts, however, that unlike other California programs, there are no restrictions on how the money can be spent. Translated into normal speak, using other people's money to support your alcohol, cigarette, and drug habits, totally fine. One of the dumbest people on the planet, Mayor Eric Garcetti, is part of a network of mayors for guaranteed income, a national network of mayors interested in determining how cash, with no strings attached, can assist households in need. Garcetti, fooling himself, thinking he's destined for greater things, however, will not be around to evaluate the program. You see, he has chosen instead to leave his post mid-term as mayor of America's second largest city in favor of an ambassadorship. So if you actually live in LA, and if this defund the police and redistribution experiment causes more crime in your neighborhood, which it most certainly will, you may have to address your complaints to New Delhi, India. Yeah. Now, I did mention earlier that Los Angeles, and more broadly Californians, are basically lab rats. You see, California is the leftist test ground for their political projects because no matter how screwed up things get, people will live with it. It's just fascinating. Let's use another example. Take our last presidential election. All the effective ways to, let's say, breach security were put into practice years ago in California. That is why, bless his heart, Larry Elder never really had a chance, nor will anyone else for that matter, as long as vote harvesting and mail-in voting is allowed in corrupt shitholes like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Now I better back off before I lose yet another damn channel. Some of this came by way of the Epoch Times. If you'd like to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.